Welcome everyone to another Campfire Session hosted by Encamp. I have today's guest, Dr. Luc, who is the owner of KMK Regulatory Services and the co-owner of SGHS Plus. So welcome, Dr. Luc, and thanks for joining us today.
Good afternoon, Luke. I'm pleased to be with you.
Absolutely. So the topic that we'll be talking about today is the globally harmonized system for safety data sheets. KMK is a specialist in safety data sheet authoring as well as SGHS Plus. So Dr. Luc, just to kind of get it started, can you just give me a basic overview of what is GHS, what are hazard classes, and why are these important?
Okay, well, briefly, yes, because it's a story going back 1992 with the United Nations setting up the system. The system is actually worldwide adopted right now, both in the Americas, Europe, Asia Pacific, and Middle East. It is the accepted, enforced globally classification, labeling, and packaging of chemicals. And it goes with the standard symbols, pictogram, hazard statement, and risk statement, so that the workers worldwide face the same labels and ultimately some of the same content in the safety data sheet they have access to.
Got it. So I know there have been some changes, with this new standard between MSDSs are now SDSs. What's the difference between these? Kind of how should people think about that?
Now, to take the question to the word, there's no difference because it's the same document, except that the safety data sheet has always been the name given by the European countries for the document, and here in America we were saying material safety data sheet. So in view of the harmonizations, they adopted the one from the EU. So now it's SDS all over the world.
Gotcha. Yeah, making it consistent. So what would you say some of the major impacts of adoption of GHS worldwide have been? How has this kind of changed, what companies need to do to make sure that they've got compliance for all of their materials, all of their, safety data sheets?
Well, actually, one must know that this supposedly globally harmonized system, I used to clarify that as the globally disharmonized system in some of my conferences, because one thinks that one of these GHS, SDS can go to worldwide and be compliant everywhere, which is absolutely not true. The only thing that is the same are the 16 sections, the headings, and some of the content. But each country adopting the GHS in its own regulatory model, have the choice of selecting which hazards and which category from the United Nations model they adopt in their own countries. So you can imagine that starting from a building block, complete building block from the United Nations, Canada, US, Europe have decided to adopt part of it. And so it remains at some point disharmonized on that front. The other thing that one must know is that each of the countries adopting the safety data sheet format have also made mandatory some of the sections to include information that other countries do absolutely not want. Example, section 3 of the document where we list the so-called hazardous ingredient. Well, if you issue an SDS for Europe, you must absolutely show the GHS classification of each of the substances in that section at 100%, but you must not do that in the Americas. So we can easily see from those two sections which one is compliant with which countries. That's to name one about many others.
Definitely. That's interesting. So, based on your kind of expertise, just overall, how harmonized are the countries worldwide, and kind of how disharmonized are they? The goal of the system is to bring it together, but still, if I'm an owner and I'm trying to make sure I'm compliant in different countries, how different can that be?
Okay. So let's take on the bright side. The SDSs worldwide are 16 sections, all in the same order and with the same title. So that's number one, harmonization. Number two, all applicable symbols, hazard symbols, must be the same. So this is just red square on type of symbols that must be used the same all over. The H phrases, which are the hazard statement, and the P phrases, the precautionary statement, must also be harmonized. The problems comes when, as we know, the devil is in the details. The problem comes when you want to classify mixtures in a country versus the others, having to know which of the hazards has been adopted by that country. Sometimes not the hazard, but the categories, because GHS goes with hazards and categories 1, 2, 3, 4. And some countries may not have adopted category 4, others would have so. So you see there that already a product, for example, classified non-hazardous in US and Canada could become a skin category 3 classified product in Mexico. So it's one thing to say that we have harmonized tools and doctrines, but the mechanics behind that is, as far as I'm concerned, pretty less harmonized.
Yeah, definitely. So I just kind of want to throw some examples out for you, just to kind of respond to. So, like, let's say that I've got some safety data sheets for my non-hazardous mixtures. I've imported these over from Europe, and then this is a raw material in one of my finished products that I'm selling in the US. How do I think about using my safety data sheet in an example like that?
Well, very importantly, one must know that within the 16 sections in the compliant US SDS, not only will you have to classify the product according to the US ASCOM 2012 standard versus the EU one, but also you must take care of potential ingredients at low concentration that could be, for example, in Prop 65 and that sort of thing. So our recommendation is really to get from the suppliers whether the full formulation, which I admit is very difficult to have, it's not really possible, but at least a written statement that they would confirm that at their knowledge, there are none of these XYZ substances in there, because your effort could be completely rolled out if not asking for that, you would end up having, for example, a Prop 65 ingredient there that would not have been shown on their SDS. Second thing is, even if the SDS shows non-hazardous in Europe, one must see if there are ingredients disclosed in Section 3 or elsewhere, and actually recalculate the overall based on the US classification model. So it's not to say that it's not classified in Europe, so I kind of drop that up. I have to take that into consideration and recalculating or reclassifying the mixture for the United States.
Yeah, that's interesting. And just for some background for those listening, so both KMK and SGHS plus, you actually work on authoring SDSs all over the world. Is that correct? Can you kind of like walk through, how do you actually work with different companies to, make sure that they are actually, harmonized, at least internally, even if all these countries are somewhat harmonized, the harmonized disharmonization?
The service that we're offering is a kind of a cradle to grave type of service. I suspect the same as Encamp on fundamental requirements and compliance as well. So obviously we have to take our customers by the hands to start with compositional information, raw materials, SDSs. As a matter of fact, SGHS Plus offers a software as a document management system as well, so we can capture your raw material SDS, making sure it's always the latest one that we have on hand. And so we start with these, of course, product formulation, existing SDSs, and we actually rewrite, reclassify from scratch based on databases. We have hundreds of thousands of pure substances in our system that these are updated quarterly, that we reuse, as I said, to classify properly the mixture for the country of destination, because this is where it counts. This is where you're going to be whether fined by the authorities. If you come in Germany with a US SDS about Prop 65, it's not going to work. They don't know what Prop 65 is in Germany.
Right.
And all of our documents, of course, are written in the language of the country of destination, which is also mandatory for, I would say, most of the countries. Have in mind India, for example, which will accept English SDS instead of Hindi language. but all of the European countries will want to have the language spoken in their countries, as well as all of Middle East countries as well. So language is something we handle as part of the regular mandate.
Hmm. And yeah, that's just it makes me curious. Do you actually have people on staff who are fluent in all these different languages? How do you actually do that translation? That seems like it could be a lot of complexity there to even make sure that the languages accurately convey the right information from the SDS.
Another very important topic indeed. We do not say we translate, because
Hmm.
translation of I don't know, 16 section SDS might have hundreds of words. That would cost anything between $400, $500 a piece, because for a translating company, they have to go from scratch and have local translators all over. So we're using a software that is actually coming to us with pre-translated thousands
Mm.
of statements, and the possibility for our team members to work in the language of their choice, whether it's French or English,
Hmm.
because we have team members all over. So they can select the language they work with, but all what the documents are that they produce are available in readily the 45 plus languages we're working. So funnily,
Gotcha.
we could funnily issue a Japanese compliant SDS in Arabic language if we want, because
Hmm.
it's all there. And we when we do have statements that are not translated, we have a ISO certified company that locally translate these statements that we incorporate in the software.
Got it. Got it. And just generally, like how you mentioned ISO. Our previous week, we spoke to an expert in ISO. How does ISO kind of tie into safety data sheets in general?
Well, ISO standards have been set up for more of the environmental
Hmm.
compliance, as you are expert into. So far, it's really more the globally harmonized system that is used as the ISO certification. They are not, uh, and there's no enforced specific ISO certification for safety data sheet. We do have with KMK certified authors by the AIHA and SCHE, but this is really not ISO certified. The standards have not gone to that extent for SDS author.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, just out of curiosity, you're obviously an expert in the space. Do you think eventually there will be, an ISO process for this, or kind of how do you see it evolving, in the coming years?
The writing of safety data sheet within the company is still part of a more ISO management type of process internally. So when you want to be ISO 9000 or ISO, I think it was 14,000, so
Hmm.
then of course the auditors will go in and will check everything. Maybe not exactly the way you write or classify your product, but at
Hmm.
least the fact that you do that with certified authors, as we have at KMK, and of course a standard process. We've developed, uh, uh, hopefully funnily it's an uh, electronic support, a huge process for only the classification of our substances. I mean, we're working with different chemists, different toxicologists, authors
Hmm.
of SDSs. It's not for the fun of one or the other that he or she can classify a substance. So we developed that process internally. If we were to be audited for ISO certification, I would feel totally comfortable to show the process that we've developed so far. But right now, as far as I'm concerned, there is no ISO certification process for specific SDS.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. And yeah, just for some context, so Dr. Luke, you have a PhD in chemistry. How like I guess how did you find yourself into safety data sheets and talking with toxicologists, all of this? Like how have you kind of applied your expertise in chemistry into also now kind of more compliance and safety data sheets, a little bit more like the nuts and bolts of industry with that chemical knowledge.
Thanks for asking. The career that I've had the privilege to go through so far, I've started with founding a first company that actually developed the software that we're using right now. So I ended the PhD in solution chemistry and started to be interested by regulations and regulatory affairs. And I created that company with another partner at that time. It's like 1990, so it's kind of 30 years back. And we decided to start programming that thing to help the companies to get standard documents and to avoid rewriting all this stuff again, the first aid for this, first aid for that. And that software became now the actual software we're using from the Sphere company. So I essentially pushed the career with following all about the United Nations GHS startup back in 1992 and followed that evolution all over. As a matter of fact, one of the disharmonization factor of this global system is the fact that since 1992, or finally the end of the year 1990, when United Nations published version 1 of this regulatory system, they are now at revision 8/9 right now. This is another impact on countries adopting GHS. For example, in the US, they adopted revision 3. In Canada, we adopted revision 5 with some tweak to try to get aligned with the US. But if you go from country to country, depending at which year they adopted it, they might be on revision 4. Some are going to revision 7 right now. So the world is constantly moving and countries constantly catching up with each other because of that.
That's fascinating. What are some of the factors that you think are making some countries adopt different standards, or kind of be behind, maybe not even behind the curve, but just on an older standard? Just how would a country go about even making that assessment? From what you've seen.
We have to work with our customers, and as I said, for each of the country destination of their products, to make sure that we maintain those documents in compliance. The work that we've done and the investments from our customers to get the documents compliance on day one must continue on years after years. So we're monitoring all of these countries and changes in regulations. The software that we're using provides us the capability of reclassifying, because these changes in revisions already introduced some new hazards or new categories that were not there before. So again, as an example, if a product was in a gas form version 3, being non-hazardous and not hazardous, but only on the pressure hazard, might not have a symbol before, and now will have a symbol with a revision 5 or 6 or 7. So there's a constant, again, movement in the disharmonization that we must maintain, and our customer must maintain through the yearly maintenance program that we're offering.